How do you respond to? I always have the Bitcoin maximalists chirping in my ear over here, and I think their response would be something like, "No, all of that will be built on Bitcoin, Lightning Network, higher layer protocols." And the general view there is that decentralization was just basically only achievable in Bitcoin, not in these other networks. How do you navigate that type of conversation?
So we're talking two different types of blockchains then.
Mm-hmm.
So there's proof of work blockchains like Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Other proof of work blockchains are like Dogecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Monero, Zcash. But Bitcoin constitutes 92% of the value of proof of work blockchains. Mm-hmm. So Bitcoin already won its category for proof of work. Mm-hmm. You can't replace the 92% dominant blockchain.
Right.
So we as the world, we've already decided that Bitcoin is the winner for proof of work. What we're talking about now is proof of stake blockchains, mm-hmm. Which are operating systems using blockchain technology. We don't know who the winners are. Those are. There's 7,000 proof of stake blockchains out there. Oh. Ethereum's converting from proof of work to proof of stake. They'll be the largest, but then there's Solana, Cardano, EOS, Tron, and so they're fighting it out.
Right.
Solana came out of nowhere over the last 18 months, and now it's the 7th largest blockchain.
Yeah.
So we just don't know who the winners on be yet for all those other ones.
So Bitcoin has won as money, but there are use cases for other consensus mechanisms that the market's sorting out.
Right, prediction markets, all sorts of other, stock markets.
Interesting. So you mentioned that we're like 20. I actually didn't know this. 25% U.S. adoption based on SCurve. So that means 75 million people in the U.S. own Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's growing like the internet so if the internet was growing, what was this from like was Netscape?
1990 to 2000. So that's when the major growth occurred.
Yeah.
So we're like in 1994.
So we're 1994 internet years in Bitcoin, basically.
Exactly.
So we're about to go into the...
Yeah. So in 2029, using what's called SCurve analysis, 90% of households should own Bitcoin in 2029, in 7 years.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah. So S-curve analysis is the way you measure the adoption of new technologies.
Yeah.
So what it means is that the amount of time it takes for a new technology to go from 0% adoption to 10% adoption is the same amount of time it takes to go from 10% to 90%.
Right.
So if it takes 10 years, like Bitcoin 2009 invention, by 2019, 10% of U.S. households own Bitcoin. Okay, so that means in 10 more years, from 2019 to 2029, it will go from 10 to 90%. And so we're at 25%. We're right on track to hit 90% in 7 years.
And so the S-curve is like kind of that flat, slow, early adopter phase. Then you get early, I forget the term, and then you basically get to mid-stage adopters, late adopters, and laggards.
Right. So the time you invest is during the apex of the slope going up.
Right.
Right. And we're just passing that, and now we're on this upward trend. And then by 2029, all the opportunity is gone.
Right.
It's like if you invest in Bitcoin in 2029, it's like buying Microsoft stock in 2000 after 90% of people already have a personal computer.
Right.
Or it's like buying Apple stock in 2018 after 90% of people already have an iPhone.
Right.
Or a smartphone. So you've missed it.
So where is the point of no return on that S-curve? Is it like 10% adoption? Have we already passed it at 25%?
Yeah, we passed it, yeah. So Brian Brooks, the comptroller of the U.S. currency in 2020, said that 15% of households own Bitcoin in the U.S. And then last year in 2021, there was a survey of 30,000 households in the U.S., and it showed 25%. And then, like I said a while ago, the Biden administration with their executive order on blockchain that came out a few weeks ago they quoted a 25% figure too. But that's old data. It's actually probably more than that today. We just haven't seen any recent surveys.
So 25% US adoption, but Bitcoin's market cap is only roughly 2% of the addressable market, but it's past the point of no return based on SCurve analysis. I mean,
yeah, that's why Michael Saylor's so excited about it, right? So I know you've talked to him on your show before, but he understands it because he experienced this 30 years ago.
Right.
He was buying up domain names 30 years ago, like hope.com, mike.com, michael.com, voice.com. Voice.com, he bought 30 years ago for probably $25.
Yeah.
He sold it for $30 million 6 months ago. Right? I mean, so that's the adoption, right?
Right.
30 years ago, you have a couple 100 million people using the internet. Today, you have billions of people using the internet. So, of course, voice.com is going to be worth more.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with Bitcoin. Right now, there's about 200 million people in the world using Bitcoin. And in 30 years, there's going to be billions of people using it.
Yeah.
It's going to be worth a lot more than it is today.
Right. Yeah, and that points towards what I think is one of the most difficult hurdles for people to get past, and it's maybe sort of twofold. One is like, what is Bitcoin? I can't see it or touch it. It's like not money like I'm used to. And then second to that is like, how can you have scarcity in the digital realm, right? It's hard. We're not accustomed to that, right? Everything that's made of data is just replicable. And really that was the problem. That was the double spend problem, right? That we couldn't figure out how to make something that couldn't be, when you send something digitally, it was always just copied, right? Even when I send you an email, it's like I still have the email. Now you have the email. We didn't have a way to make that transfer with finality. But I think once you get that about Bitcoin, like that's kind of a light bulb moment. It's like, holy cow, we've ported the properties of physical space into digital space. Right. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's digital cash. It's like, it's like the white paper.
Yeah.
It's a cashless, it's a peer-to-peer cash system. I mean, it's like me handing you a $20 bill. If it's out of my hand and your hand, it's your 20.
Right.
Right. That's what Bitcoin is. So when I send you value in Bitcoin through the blockchain, it comes from my side of the ledger and it's on your side of the ledger. Yeah. That's your $20 worth of Bitcoin now. Right. And it's not mine anymore.
And then that third entry on the ledger is the irreversible timestamp, basically.
It's immutable.
Yes.
Right. It's immutable. Like, when I first heard that word, I was like, what does it immutable mean? It means non-reversal.
Yeah.
Like it can't, I can't go in and like pull that back from you. Like, oh, I made a mistake. Let me pull it back. Once I transfer it to you, it's permanent.
Yeah.
It's yours. If I wanted to get that $20 worth of Bitcoin back, you have to send it back to me.
Yeah.
Right? I can't pull it back.
Yeah.
And that's why I think credit card companies kind of like blockchain too.
Yeah.
Credit card companies, they get chargebacks. You go buy something and, there's whatever happens and they get chargebacks. And so if you have an immutable credit card system, that cuts down, that saves them billions of dollars a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a relationship here too between the double spend problem and inflation itself, right? Like the fact that money can be conjured out of thin air is also a problem, right? Like, all the things we've talked about. So we need something that's verifiably, I mean, we're trading time and energy for it, right? Time and energy is clearly limited. If the thing that we're trading it for is not similarly limited, then that's a problem, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of questions about, we need a Federal Reserve, right? We need a central bank. But the central bank didn't start until 1913.
Right.
What do we do before that? What do we do for the first 150 years of America before there was a central bank? Well, the people that controlled the money were the central bank. I don't think it's coincidence that the same year J.P. Morgan died, that the Federal Reserve started. Is it?
Right.
J.P. Morgan died, and then a group of bankers got together and said, let's start a central bank because Morgan's not here anymore controlling us.
Right.
Morgan was the central bank.
Yeah.
But now we have a like a Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
It's not federal. It's not a reserve either.
Yeah. I love that. So we talked a little bit about Bitcoin being added to portfolios almost by necessity, I guess, in an inflationary world. Like if you want to preserve wealth across time, that you're going to end up adding a little bit of Bitcoin, if nothing else, as a diversifier that improves your Sharpe ratio. I know you've mentioned something here about portfolio construction and performance. What does that look like? Like we tend to think, I think a lot of people think the stock market goes up forever, just put your money in there and don't think about it. But that's not actually the case when you start looking at historical comparisons of, say, like Bitcoin and cash or Bitcoin and treasury portfolios.
Yeah, when you add Bitcoin to your portfolio, like we talked about, it increases the Sharpe ratio, or the risk-adjusted returns. Mm-hmm. So let's just take it to an extreme. Let's say you had a portfolio that was 10% Bitcoin and 90% cash. What would that portfolio look like? So that portfolio of 10% Bitcoin, 90% cash, that was less volatile than a portfolio of 100% U.S. Treasury bonds, 10-year Treasuries. Huh. So you have less volatility than owning a portfolio of 10-year Treasuries.
Which is the risk-free asset, right?
And you got 8 times more the return.
Wow.
So why wouldn't I want that?
Yeah.
I'm less risky than Treasuries and I get 8 times more. Okay. Well, how does that 10% Bitcoin, 90% portfolio of cash compare to other stocks like Apple, Tesla, Amazon? That outperformed all the FANG stocks, Facebook, Tesla, Facebook, Apple. The only one that didn't outperform was Tesla. And so you would have to have 30% Bitcoin, 70% cash to outperform Tesla. Tesla's the only one that outperformed the 1090. So if you think about it, why wouldn't everyone just have 10% Bitcoin and 90% cash? Mm-hmm. And you could outperform the stock market. You could have less risk than a portfolio of 10-year Treasury bonds.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense.